basically what is happening is we're destroying our entire garden.
Yep.
A whole year's work. We're going to dig it all up.
Yep.
And we're going to start again. And the well is still bone dry, and we don't know when it's going to rain again. So some drastic measures are needed. Yeah, if I stop drinking beer.
Yeah, the beer runs out first.
But I can put a call out to the boys online.
Yeah.
Emergency beers required, and they'll all turn up with beer.
So here goes nothing. I hope this works. So this is the rainfall, high on the land.
Yeah, so I think it might be a while before I can drive.
I think so. Welcome back to the wildlands. In last week's video, we told you that we had big plans for the wildlands, and tonight you're going to find out exactly what those are. But first, Dom has some news of his own, don't you?
In July 2021, with the increase in travel restrictions caused by Brexit and the pandemic, we decided to buy off-grid land in Portugal to live a more sustainable lifestyle.
Follow along with our journey as we turn our beautiful but derelict land into our very own slice of off-grid heaven. Wildlands.
Welcome back, where it's finally, after 3 months of drought, raining on the wildlands. Certainly is an excitement, which I never thought I'd say. First fire of the year. But the reality is that despite some monumental rain over a couple of days, it wasn't enough, and the well is still bone dry, and we don't know when it's going to rain again. So some drastic measures are needed if we're going to be able to continue staying on the wildlands and getting our fruit forest going.
What are you building, Dom? But first, Dom has some news of his own, don't you?
Oh, super news. Yeah, you may remember when I was building the kitchen, I had a bad back, which was the result of trying to lug too much mud out of the well.
Yep.
And it was a moderately bad back, so I could still sort of potter about, but I couldn't lift anything. So we went on to the kitchen, back got better. Guess what I did the other day?
We were moving some manure.
And now I have a completely dysfunctional back. I can just about hobble in a straight line. Takes me 5 minutes to sit down and stand up.
Yep. There's no lifting, no carrying.
No anything.
You can't even bend over to get a beer out of the fridge. The poor love.
Yep.
That's a hard life, isn't it?
I can't bend forward to pick something up that's below the length of my arm.
So Dom has been doing a lot of sitting.
And looking sad.
Yesterday and the day before. And I've been doing everything else, like you did when I was ill.
Yep.
It's just how it goes. We're really fortunate. We have some cracking friends out here who have brought us stuff. Thank you to Helios for bringing us creams and things like that, because they've been helping.
Very much appreciated.
And thank you to Dave, who's brought us shopping, because without that we were going to run out of drinkable water and orange juice and bread and things. So that is just amazing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I think it might be a while before I can drive.
I think so.
and I'd probably be fine, but I've been getting twinges and I didn't really fancy getting a twinge while I'm driving and maybe being unsafe, so
Yep.
staying
So,
on the wildlands
we're here
it
on
is.
the wildlands. But the good thing is that as well as our fabulous friends bringing us the bits that we really needed, we've also been stocking up slowly in the last year, and I've just been putting by, you know, a few extra jars of beans, a few extra packets of cat food, so now we can go for like a month, I think.
Yeah, if I stop drinking beer.
Yeah, the beer runs out first.
But I can put a call out to the boys online.
Yeah.
Emergency beers
They'll all
required,
turn up
and
with
they'll all
beer.
turn up with beer. So that's all right.
Yeah, so hopefully you'll get better soon, and in the
Yep.
meantime, I made today's video about swales.
And this is all very calm about this, but basically what is happening is we're destroying our entire garden.
Yep.
A whole year's work. We're going to dig it all up.
Yep.
And we're going to start again. So
Yep.
drastic, big changes, and this is going to tell you why that is and explain what is actually very sound logic with water. Quite
Yeah.
exciting stuff, actually.
It is. So here goes nothing. I hope this works. So this is the rainfall, high on the land. Oh, it's working, look at that. Well, how magic. So that's exactly what we hoped would happen. This is what's happening to our land at the moment. All the water is just pouring off, some soaking in a little bit, but we're losing a lot down the hill. And here, this was obviously the first one to fill up. The other two filled up from some of the runoff from elsewhere, and they're holding the water. Some of the water did escape over here, but you know, when you've got trees planted and bushes and so on, and it's life-size scale and not just teeny tiny, then you don't have this. What you can do is actually create a specific path where you want them to overflow if you get a sudden mad flash flood kind of event. And then it's like a controlled overflow either into another berm or into a drainage ditch. But that's exactly it, that's ideal. Look at that, what magic. So that was our first swale. It's full, it's holding the water and it is slowly soaking in. It'll soak down, but it's also soaking in here to the berm, and the trees and the plants will be happily slurping it up. Second swale, and third swale. You can see here the soil of the berm soaking up the water. I would say that was a very successful experiment. It's been about 10 minutes since I poured the water, and I've just come back to get a closer look. And you can see the dry soil versus the wet soil here. It's soaking all in, doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And down here in this swale as well, you can see it soaking up. And finally down here, most of the water has gone out of this swale. It didn't fill up as much as the others, but the water has gone into the berm. It's down here in the garden, things are all changed. We've used our whole first year here as a bit of a test. So we got things growing, we were so excited to have vegetables and herbs and all sorts. But everything we knew was just a bit of a gamble, see what happens. We found out where the sun moves, where the shade moves, where in the different soils plants thrive, where they grow, where they fail, where the prevailing winds come through, and what drops out of the sky. So now that we have all that information, we're going to rip everything up and start again. All of these logs that we've left as path markers, they're all coming out. We're going to stack them over up at the top somewhere and let them dry out, turn them into firewood. And then we're going to mark out where we think swales would go. And then using the A-frame level that Dom built the other day, we're going to work out where the contours are, because swales need to be level. And then we're going to dig 1, 2, possibly 3 swales down here. For those of you that don't know, a swale is a shallow trench dug on the land's contour with a berm, which is a hill, made on the downhill side of the trench using the earth that you've dug out of the trench. And then you plant trees and other plants on the top of the berm. Then when water moves down the land, it's captured in the trench and slowly seeps in Some of it in the bottom, but most of it through the lovely loose soil of the berm. And swales are actually best considered as a temporary feature in a landscape, because as the trees that you've planted on the berm grow, their roots go deep. You plant deep-rooted plants such as comfrey and rhubarb and strawberries and so on, and their roots go in. They help hold the soil of the berm together, but they also channel that water down. Now, after however many years, when these trees have got their roots in properly, the swale's job is no longer needed to keep the water in place and to channel it down into the soil. The whole purpose of a swale is not just to have that little bit of water, it's to rehydrate the land, which is why we want to do it. Our soil is very good at holding on to water, so what we want to do is, once we've got our swales dug, we're actually going to use our well water next year to carry on the effect of rainfall. We're going to fill the swales and let that soak in, fill the swales and let that soak in, and then hopefully over time what they call a plume develops underneath the ground. You've got your soil here, and the water seeps in and makes a bit of a plume going down the hill. Then the next year it seeps a bit further because there's still some moisture in there. And the next year it seeps a bit further. It takes about 7 years for the maximum sort of plume rehydration to occur. And that then helps you to also create a bit of a microclimate down here. So the pioneer trees of Portugal are mainly pine, holm oak, cork oak and olive. But we don't want to put any more pines or oaks for that matter in our garden. So we're going to use some olive, sweet chestnut, moringa, which is also known as the miracle tree, grows really fast and has hundreds of uses, hazel, almond and fruit trees, including things like fig and mulberry that grow here naturally anyway. And I'm quite keen on adding some ginkgo, carob, strawberry tree, elder and some bamboo. Then underneath, so those are all of your pioneer trees. They're the ones that grow fast and they'll get the roots down, and at some point in the future, maybe 10, 20 years in the future, they give you a great big canopy which keeps the moisture in your system through evapotranspiration from the leaves. Then in the understory, because we're doing a sometimes called a fruit forest or a fruit garden or a food garden, it's not just, we don't just want banks of trees and hedgerows, we want all different kinds of plants. So the understory we're going to use hawthorn and dog rose, feijoa, which are pineapple guava, currants, berries, all that kinds of things, red currants, blackberries, blueberries, and also lots of nitrogen fixers. So the most obvious nitrogen fixers here, we had lupins growing wild on the lands. We're going to add some of those. Clover, which grows incredibly fast, and it grabs the nitrogen in the soil and it holds it there in nodules, which can then be used by all the other plants and the trees that you have ready there. And beans and peas are also very good nitrogen fixers. Now, hopefully, I'm hoping that we can avoid having to move any of our existing fruit and nut trees. It might be tricky. We have quite a lot. We've got a beautiful little almond here behind me. We've got apples and nectarines and pears and plums and all sorts. And they've done so well last year, or this year rather, trying to survive. They've survived. They have. Some of them have given fruit. Most of them have just put all of their energy, I think, into putting their roots in. So it'd be a real shame if we have to dig them up and move them around and replant them, which we will if we have to, but if we're clever with where we put our swales, I think we can probably avoid that. Now I'm thinking our very first swale should actually be here somewhere, because the land that way is going so steep. So the water comes rushing down the hill towards the chickens and then rushing down to the garden. So let's capture it here first if we can. Might be tricky because we definitely know there's granite over there, but we'll do our best. And I think here would be an ideal place for the next one, if we can avoid this nectarine tree just here. And I think the last one will go across the end of the garden down here, thinking we won't need more than 3 in such a small space. The other thing we'd like to add is ponds. I'd really like to have a small wildlife pond here. Originally I was thinking of having unlined or lined with clay, but for the moment it's more practical to use a liner and maybe remove that in the future when costs allow. Somewhere in between the 3 swales and the berms and the trees and everything else, I'd like a small wildlife pond. And Don was thinking of having a much bigger pond further up the land so that we can use gravity to bring water down here for irrigation should we need it. And we'd fill both ponds with water from our well pumped up to the top and to get them going, and then when we run out of water in the well, they just have to take their chances. Maybe the wildlife pond would dry up for the hottest months of the year and then it would refill as soon as the rains come. And a final view of my little swale experiment, where you can see it's thoroughly soaked in to all 3 of the swales there. So if you imagine if that was my fruit garden, all the trees and the vegetables that I've just planted have had a specific amount of water added to them. And the water that's soaked down has gone down into the ground directly underneath where we've planted them too. Whereas on the other side, if that was my garden, some of the water has soaked down, but a lot of it has run off beyond where the garden even is. Not rehydrating. We're enjoying cooler temperatures at the moment. It's only been about 30 degrees the last few days, and that's only going to last for another 3 or 4 days, and then back down to 23, 22. It's been chilly in the mornings, hasn't it?
It has been chilly.
It's been cold. It's been jumpers on and socks.
And one morning I even put the fire on.
Yes, yep. So that's been lovely. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and stay tuned for the next one, which is hopefully when we're actually going to be getting, like, ripping things apart.
Yep. And getting Dave back to help us dig our swales.
Yes.
So that's exciting. Mule done, all moved. Now it's on to sand. Exciting stuff off grid. What are you doing, Missy?
Having a heart attack. I'm shifting all the sand.
You're making a sandcastle?
Yeah, we're going to use it for building down there. We don't want it up here because it's a parking spot.
Why are you moving it now?
Oh, it's very heavy work because we've got a whole bunch of people coming to stay. We've got 3 separate vehicles, which is exciting. But first we've got to do tidy ups. Yeah, beautiful eyes. You can go. Whee. So now you know what we intend for our garden. Hope you found that entertaining, instructive maybe. We're just learning as well as we go, aren't we?
Well, I
Lots
think
of
it's
reading.
a good learning curve. We always said we would watch in the first year, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I think, again, this is all an experiment. So we'll be watching the second year. We've really got to solve water storage as well. So I know Missy mentioned briefly about ponds, but we've looked at all the different types of water storage. So I might tell you about those in a bit more detail in another video. So yeah, part 1 on swales.
Yeah.
Part 2 to follow.
Part 2 with all the digging and the ripping and the getting
dismantling.
hands dirty. Yeah. Cool. All right, well, thank you again for joining us this week at Wildlands. And thank you for liking, subscribing, your comments. They're keeping you entertained, aren't you, sitting in your chair?
Yeah, I need to get back and answer them all now. I've been feeling sorry for myself for 3 days, literally just sitting, looking miserable.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get busy now. So thanks for watching, and
we'll see you again soon.
I look forward to your comments. Ciao.
Bye.